offered by Councilman Brian Lewis.
Shall we pray? First, we thank you, God, for all you've done for us in protecting our city. We ask you to continue to bless us in this city. We have a beautiful city, and we want to keep it that way. We need your help. Touch each person that's on the council. Bless us in all our decisions we make tonight. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Before we recite the pledge, I'd like to take a moment of silence in memory of Justice Antonin Scalia of the United States Supreme Court, who recently passed. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I want to take a brief moment to recognize that Representative Sean Lynn is here in the chambers this evening, as is an alumnus. Former Council President Bill McGlumphy is here, and we're always glad to see you back, Bill. Thanks for coming. You have before you this evening's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Move for approval as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Hutchison and seconded by Councilman Hare to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now before you the consent agenda. Those items on the council agenda which are considered routine and non-controversial are marked with an asterisk and will be acted upon by a single roll call vote of the council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of council so requests, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent agenda, considered a separate item. What is the pleasure of council? Councilman Cole.
Remove 6A1, please.
Councilman Cole has requested that 6A, A1 be removed from the agenda.
Let's second that.
Requested by Councilman Cole and Councilman Hospital. Any other additions or any other requests for the consent agenda? I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Neal and seconded by Councilman Anderson. Any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sudler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 2, I would ask that Councilman Hare, who is a member of the Elks Club, as well as Councilman Hutchison and Councilman Hosfeld, who are in the 1st District, come to the podium and would invite Marvin and Megan Solomon, Bill McGlumphy, Deborah Biddle, Sharon Cook, Carolyn Courtney, Betty Hammond, Yvonne Biddle, Heisler, Kathy King, Debbie Cryer, Stephanie McGlumphy, Sheila Nizagoda, Patty Stanley, and Joanne Zajac to the podium for a presentation of the Certificate of Appreciation for the Dover Elks Lodge 1903 Code Purple Grant Project. I request the city clerk to read the certificate into the record.
Whereas the members of Dover Elks Lodge number 1903 have historically dedicated themselves to supporting charitable causes in the Dover area. They have undertaken a special initiative to serve the homeless in the greater Dover area by partnering with Code Purple, which provides refuge for the homeless when weather conditions become dangerous. Through the diligent efforts of their membership, led by Mrs. Doris J. Solomon, the leading knight in Dover Elks Lodge number 1903, they secured a $10,000 grant from the Elks Grand Lodge toward this goal, using these funds to purchase the items most needed by those being served. And whereas, although Mrs. Doris J. Solomon passed away unexpectedly in January 2016, her legacy of selflessly serving the less fortunate lives on through the dedicated service of Dover's Elks Lodge number 1903 and the Code Purple Committee. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Dover, Delaware, do hereby present this Certificate of Appreciation to Dover Elks Lodge number 1903 Code Purple Committee, Deborah Biddle, Sharon Cook, Carolyn Courtney, Betty Hammond, Yvonne Biddle Heisler, Kathy King, Debbie Cryer, Stephanie McGlumphy, Sheila Nizgoda, Patty Stanley, and Joanna Zajac in acknowledgement of their significant contributions to the community and extend best wishes in all future endeavors.
I'd ask the mayor. Mayor Christensen has been hobbled a bit, wasn't able to make it down to the podium, but I asked him if he wanted to offer any comments at this time, and then I'll to Councilman Hare.
I just want to say that what these ladies and gentlemen have done is very admirable, and I hope they all agree with me that if it wasn't for the leadership of Mrs. Solomon, this would, I don't know if this would have happened. But because she was a very, very wonderful lady and cared about everybody in the community, especially the homeless. So I want to thank her. I know she's watching, so here's some extra ones for whoever.
Mayor Christensen, you want to offer? Mayor Christensen, you want to offer some comments?
Well, I would only like to echo Councilman Hare's comments, but I will end my comments by saying BPOE 1903, best people on earth are Elks.
Councilman Sudler.
I'd just like to thank each and every one of the Elks Lodge members for exemplifying an extraordinary and kind heart to the people. It takes a special kind of person to service the community and show dedication like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. McLaughlin.
I want to thank the council, all members of the office and so forth, especially the clerk's office. I want to thank everyone for kind words. This is the first kind words I've heard in a long, long time toward me. Thank you.
As I said earlier, always good to see you. You're always welcome back. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, the final reading of proposed ordinance number 2015-24, rezoning request for property located adjacent to the west property line of 1042 South Bradford Street. Earlier today, we received a letter sent to the City Council. I'll read it. It says, "This letter is to advise that I wish to withdraw my application for the revised zoning on my property at 1042 South Bradford Street, Dover, Delaware. Thank you for your cooperation. Sincerely, signed, Joel Halper." I'll entertain a motion to accept the letter.
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Councilman Hare and seconded by Councilman Sudler. Any discussions on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We now have before us an item that was pulled off of the consent agenda, item 6A, A1, Draft Committee Strategic Plan to submit for staff review of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Enhancement Committee. I would first ask the chair of that committee, Councilman Anderson, to brief us on the issue.
Thank you, Mr. President. In February 9th, the Parks and Recreation Committee was continuing its look at a strategic plan, and that is to be able to determine the shape of where we spend the money for our parks and recreation. Just make sure that we have an opportunity to take citizen input and use that citizen input to guide our activities as opposed to our activities guiding what the citizens do. We've taken into account many different items, most of which had been a criteria that we had set up approximately a year ago, which was to include items in the needs assessment that were 25% and above. We also took into account citizen input, which had been gathered through many sources, whether it was through testimony or a survey of residents by the Mount Zion Social Action Committee. All of that was put together, and we had a draft, which was for discussion and for staff to look at, give their input, changes, and it was a beginning, not an end. And it was, and we, of course, those who were present heard the testimony from Mayor Christensen, who testified about a community center and the seeking of monies that were available as well, which I personally checked with with some members of our General Assembly, and there is an appetite to do something if there's a nod from us in the March Joint Finance recess. There are people willing to champion that. We don't need to commit. We just need to say we're interested. Basically, it's if we don't say we're interested, we lose the opportunity to choose, because that could be $1.5 million that we don't know if we'll ever see again. So we're not making wouldn't be making a commitment, but we would be making a level of interest. And that's, and also we had previous testimony from former Council President Williams and others who spoke about opportunities for leasing a community center to nonprofits, which would alleviate the city of staffing requirements. So all of that was put together, and that was part of the discussion that came about last week. Did Mr. Cole, Councilman Cole, Councilman Hosfeld, you have specific questions, I presume?
I'll turn to them in 1 second. I just want to confirm that you have a commitment for $1.5 million from the Joint Finance Committee? Is that what I heard you say?
No, not at all. Not at all. We have people willing to champion that. Because the mayor had mentioned that.
So there is no commitment from the Joint Finance Committee?
That would be
$1.5 million.
That would be March. And what was requested from, for instance, Representative Lynn, was if we could get a positive nod, because he was one interested in pursuing it, and apparently, and of course, I don't want to speak for the mayor. I'd rather him speak for himself on the lobbying that he's done.
All right, thank you.
But I did do some confirmation.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Cole, you asked for this to come off consent agenda?
Yeah, first I would like to just thank Ms. Townsend for providing us with the packet here to kind of give us a little background, a little history as to how we're going about this. I guess my concern is I haven't heard anything really concrete. I've heard a lot of proposals, a lot of what we want to do, which is great. I mean, I'm all for moving forward and trying to provide services and try to provide things, but at the same time, I think we need to see some concrete evidence or some concrete answers as to what we're doing moving forward here. And there's a lot of loose ends, I think, that haven't been addressed. And I don't know if Councilman Hausfeld has anything to say, but when it's ready, I would defer to staff to kind of.
Councilman Hausfeld?
I recall back in the January meeting, excuse me, recall back in the January meeting of the Parks Rec, that this issue first came up. We started talking about wanting to do things, funding, and we were trying to get direction to staff to start looking into a building. And at that point, I think there was a motion at the committee level. It died because it couldn't get a second. So from that point, and again, I apologize, I know I was absent for the last 2 meetings because of work commitments, but I don't know how we got from that point to this point, and now I see articles in the paper, I see emails going back and forth, and I don't know, we don't have a commitment for 1.5. At no point did that ever come up. I don't recall that. And, you know, that was part of the reason that we didn't get a second on the original motion at the committee level was, you know, we're jumping way ahead of the gun.
Well, as you said, the discussion of the 1.5 million came after that, and that was something that came about the mayor had reached out to two members of the General Assembly, and that had come about, and I found that to be confirmed, and there is interest. But the one request that we had was if we're interested, we just need to make a nod that we're interested. It's too early to, at this point, this is going to be a multi-year process, and quite frankly, it's too early to have, to lock down specifics. It's just realistic at this point. We made a plan approximately 2 years ago that this was part of the way council had planned to go, but of course the present council is not bound by a previous council. And that's just the way it is. It's not, it wasn't an ordinance, it was just, at that time it was a commitment by a previous council that it was planned that if the recreation center were demolished, that we would find a way to replace it. In fact, that if you look back at those minutes, it was part of the reason why it took months to actually approve the demolition, because council at that time was concerned that if the demolition were approved, that it would become out of sight, out of mind before before an engineering study was started. And that was at that time, that was a fairly controversial issue, and it's but now we have other opportunities with partnering with nonprofits. We have testimony from our October meeting about the value and necessity of a police athletic league and a police athletic league center. We have also testimony in January about with two other community organizations which would be interested in making things available and leasing the facility, and they discussed that their particular funding mechanisms for doing so. And then you're talking about existing programs, not startups. So those were all the factors that came together in the intervening times.
Do you want to follow up, Councilman Hosfeld, then I have Councilman Singer.
Thank you. If I could direct this towards Ms. Townsend, and maybe it's Mr. Koenig, I don't know, but at the end of the life cycle, if you will, for the building at Dover Park, what were we using it for? If I remember, it had fallen in disrepair, we weren't even using it.
At that point, it was used only as office, and then when we moved the staff from that location to Dover Park, or I'm sorry, to Schutte Park, to the Pitt Center, it was no longer used.
So how long before?
Can I ask one? Can you just hold 1 second? We're going to turn the microphones up. Some people in the audience have expressed difficulty hearing. I want to make sure everyone can hear this. I apologize for that. Go ahead and try them now.
So how long before we closed that building, before we demolished it, were we still running programs up to a certain date, or had the programs fallen by the wayside?
In 2008 is when the Pitt Center opened, so there were attempts to hold programs at Dover Park in the rec center after that, but we never got enough attendance to be able to move forward with the programs. The programs were canceled. We were having, right up until, I guess, the end of 2012, we had people renting it for parties and baby showers and things like that, but actual programming ceased pretty much right after the Pitt Center opened.
And do you know what kind of programs we were trying to run at that point?
Well, we did, we would do fitness classes and things like that. There was a period in time when we were trying to do more youth-oriented programs, after-school dance type things, and we just didn't get any registration for that. So we were able to do like some fitness and some soul line dancing and stuff like that, I think for a little bit, but then people stopped registering.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Sutler.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for doing a comprehensive plan for the needs, recreational needs and assessments for the city of Dover. My concern is when I look at the needs survey cluster, it doesn't give an example of the actual programs and activities that were desired in the Social Action Commission's needs assessment survey for the East Side, nor in my reading does it give an example of the overall for the city of Dover's comprehensive plan. It doesn't specify how many people wanted a splash park, how many people wanted the actual baseball or tennis courts to be revitalized or restored. And it goes back to Councilman Cole's concern and statement. There's no physical data here provided that gives us a clear-cut picture as to what we'd be supporting. I know that the Social Action Commission provided physical data, and I don't see it here. I don't see the programs nor any other information other than the fact that it's in a cluster survey. I think that needs to be included. We need to see what the programs were from all avenues, not just a comprehensive citywide approach, but also from the non-profit such as Social Action Commission and other agencies that may have been interested in providing that. I think that needs to be included in this cluster, and I think it's very imperative that it's included ASAP before we start a blueprint and the further discussion on what kind of facility we're going to have. And I'd like to thank Councilman Cole for bringing that question up, and also Councilman Hosfeld for his concerns as well. Thank you.
Councilman Lewis, I think you had raised concern.
I just had one question, and this is prior to us new guys being on city council. Was there any commitments made with respect to rebuilding this rec facility on White Oak? And maybe you can answer that, Mr. Slade, because you were on council way before I was, when the old rec center was demolished.
Councilman led a charge to, and I supported him, to make sure that we didn't demolish without having plans in place for a replacement facility. That did not carry the day. So the facility was demolished, and now we're dealing with a replacement facility. If I could, I'll offer some comments. Earlier in my career on city council, I regretfully voted against the Pitt Center. Okay, it's a vote that I regret because I've seen the success of that center and how much it's in use, how much it has meant to the community. The reason I voted against it was I felt that we built the right center in the wrong place.
Right.
Okay, so we were building a recreation center for youth, and what we're trying to do is target at-risk youth and give them a safe place to go. And we build it where it's completely inaccessible to the largest population of at-risk.
That's right.
It's a great facility if you have a car.
Right.
It's a great facility if you have a friend who has a car and you can get a ride out there. It's difficult to ride your bicycle out there, very difficult to walk out there with public transportation.
That's right. That's right.
That said, the 3rd District, as you know, is where I started and where I live, and I know very well the needs out on the east side of town, and I think it's been neglected for some time. But it hurts me that, once again, we're not looking at where the population centers are for at-risk youth and addressing the 4th District as well as the 3rd District.
Right.
I think there are opportunities in both places. I've been a little concerned, a little disturbed about the kind of ready, fire, aim approach that we've taken to this. It seems like there hasn't been enough deliberation. There's good data that's out there between our survey and Mount Zion survey. I think it should be brought together. I think it should be used to make decisions. All right, it shouldn't be used to support decisions that have already been made. You should be used to make decisions.
Right.
It should be a data-driven process. I am very concerned with any project, whether it be a rec center or anything else, that comes forward and says, as was said 2 weeks ago, that grants will pay for it. Grants will pay for the operations of it. Because if that's the business model that you're starting with, there's going to be some pain, there's going to be some trouble along the way. And when the trouble comes, it's going to be trouble for the city finances. Because once you open a center like that, which I am all in favor of, someone has to pay to keep the lights on, to keep the doors open, to keep the programs going. You can't hang a sign up that says, sorry, we didn't get grant funding this week. Sorry, we didn't get grant funding this year. The expectation will be implicit, if not tacit, on the city to fund that building. And I think we all need to be sober and admit that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm fine with that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
Oh,
look
yeah.
at the costs and let's get to it.
Right.
But I don't want to dance around that issue anymore. What I'm trying to prevent, what I'm hoping we all prevent, is the dilemma and the fiasco that we had as a city many years ago with the original shooting park proposal, which was not understood, didn't have support, and wasn't approved. And we still experience some pain from that decision and the way that was approached. It's unfortunate, but that's just the fact of it. So I'll stop my comments now. I have a few more things. Councilman Hosfeld and then I had Councilman Neal first. Councilman Neal?
Mr. President, you actually hit upon the things that I'm concerned about, because I hear what we would like to have done, and I know that the mayor has sent a letter to Attorney General Den for the 1.5 million. I don't hear that we have a solid commitment from PAL or any of those groups who are going to actually either use it, run it, or supply the money for it. I don't hear a commitment at this point that we have 1.5 million. And if you say to me, we have 1.5 million, I'm kind of leaning in that direction, coupled with the fact you have specifically an organization that's going to be able to fund it, to run it, and to run the activities and to bring the kids in. Because my understanding is we didn't have people there. They didn't come for the activities. And when it didn't come from the activities, it went, whew. Now I know that we used to vote down there, but that's about the only thing that I can remember. So my feeling is to table this or delay this until we have a commitment where the money's coming from and who actually is going to run it. We seem to run into a problem when we overreach ourselves with, I think, what we call desire. We desire to have it because it's a doggone good thing to have. But until we have that financial commitment with this group saying we're not going to be able to raise taxes, I think we better have that money in hand.
Thank you, Councilman Neal. Councilman Hosfeld, and then Councilman Hutchinson.
I have a couple things. We spoke about grant funding. Do we currently have grant funding committed to any project with our parks? I mean, there's talk about changing the use of the grant funding for an indoor facility
Right.
versus outdoor facility, or?
This current fiscal year, we have grant funding in place for improvements to Mallard Pond Park that include a playground and a multi-use path. The grant funding is done on an annual basis, so the application deadline is in July of every year, and then the funding comes through typically winter, early spring. So we do have 2 projects that we have funding through the state grant funding to assist with. That same pool of grant funding would not be applicable to indoor facilities. That is outdoor specific.
Okay. And what have we set aside in the CIP? Have we set anything aside in the CIP for parks?
We have, if you look at the memo I handed out, the top of the second page, actually the 4th paragraph, we have a parkland reserve fund. Currently, there's $324,266 in that fund. We have $33,000 of that allocated to the playground project at Mallard Pond. Prior motions of City Council have designated $180,000 of that for Dover Park. So that leaves available $111,266 that could be used elsewhere in the park system. One of the challenges with the Parkland Reserve is that the only real funding stream is if a developer comes in to build a residential development and does not provide on-site recreation amenities, they can pay cash in lieu. And because we're not seeing residential land development applications, the influx of money is very little into that. I mean, it's unpredictable, and it's rare at this point.
Okay, Mr. Council President, my last question would be, obviously, there's been a lot of work done by the Social Action Committee. At what point are we going to bring in their concerns and their survey results?
So, again, if you go to the first page of the memo that I've handed out, the question was asked about why that survey wasn't used in the recreation needs assessment, and that was very specific about a recreation center at Dover Park. So what I've said is that when we get down to the level of doing a master plan for Dover Park, which is what our intention would be on the staff level to do as a capital project in the next fiscal year, that's where we would bring that data source in and then supplement it with additional outreach to the public.
Thank you.
It may be helpful at this time, if it's the pleasure of council, to introduce a motion to put that instruction on the staff that the Social Action Committee survey information be included in our deliberations and in all the data numbers that we're punching into this project.
So moved.
Been moved by Councilman Sudler.
Second.
Second by Councilman Anderson. Is there any question on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilman Hutchinson.
Mr. President, thank you. I think it's important that everyone understands that Anne Marie's office and staff is charged with the responsibility of getting a master plan and a clear understanding of what the schools are doing in the city of Dover, what the churches are doing from a recreation point of view, Kent County Levy Court, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, and the city of Dover. In order for us to evaluate and share our concern about what the needs are for the future, we have to have a clear understanding of what that is. And that's basically the charge that we have placed upon Anne Marie's office to try to get together. And once we have that, and it's very critical, whatever that comes back, before we do anything with the information we have, that information's got to go to the staff of the city. City manager, the finance department, because quite frankly, it's nice to say I want, but you got to find out what we can afford to do. And one of the things that deeply concerns me, we have to include our city manager, our finance director, our staff, to making sure that the information is given to them before we take a final vote on what we should or shouldn't do. Because we need to have a clear understanding of how we're going to pay for it. And until they have had the opportunity to have that, then we really don't know where we're going or what we can and can't do. The concerns that has been raised by each and every one of you, I can assure you we all share those concerns. But it is absolutely imperative on our part to allow the staff to gather the information, get the facts, allow the city manager and finance director to put the facts together so we can look at it from a financial point of view and then come back with, and we can then clearly talk about what we can and can't do. Thank you.
Councilman Sudler.
I'd just like to say, for the record, that the Social Action Commission of Mount Zion AME Church has turned in a survey in January 2014, and we've been patient, and we're going to continue to be patient. And I agree with you, but I want to let you know that it has been 2 years, and our constituents are counting on us to put something back in place of what we took down. Thank you.
Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think there may be some confusion about what is being proposed because, quite frankly, I think we discussed this before where we all share concerns in that if we were supposed to move on this, in my opinion, it's not ready. The proposal's not ready for prime time. And that's...
Just like clarification, there hasn't been a proposal.
Well, the mayor's proposal. However, what it is ready for is to basically for people to sit down together and to have a discussion and evaluation towards getting to where we had said that we wanted to go. And that's basically where we are. This is about getting that evaluation started. It's about having the mayor's office, the police department, everybody else sitting down with the parks department, with the city manager, and about talking together and seeing what those needs are, as well as everything we've gotten from the citizens. I think there seems to be a misunderstanding of what was being requested. Because I certainly don't disagree with anything said, and it's not some things that I haven't expressed myself. So, but I do think it's worthy of going the next step, and that is evaluation. And if we don't make it a priority, it will never get evaluated, and it will never happen.
Thank you, Councilman Anderson. Any further discussion on the matter? I have one last comment that I want to make, and I would ask the chair of the Safety and Transportation Committee if he would pick this up in his committee as a follow-up item. I'm deeply concerned that last year we went through and authorized 10 additional officers for the Dover Police Department. We have struggled to get them on because of retirements and get our authorization up. I've personally been to meetings where I've heard Dover police officers say, we don't have the manpower yet, and I get it, I understand, we're just not at that level. But now I understand that there is an officer whose responsibilities have been detailed to the Police Athletic League activities. And I just want to reiterate, we raised taxes on every person in this city last year, and a big part of that was to put more uniformed officers on the street to solve crimes and prevent crimes. And I guess I'm wanting a little bit more information on how something that wasn't never mentioned during that authorization process, those 10 new officers, is now a priority, and now we have a staff member, we have a uniformed officer whose responsibility is for that. And I would ask Councilman Hosfeld if you would include that on the agenda for your committee. Thank you. Being no further discussion, I need a motion to approve the report from the, to approve the recommend, well, so the action taken by the Committee of the Whole was to defer the item. I would ask for a motion to approve that recommendation of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. President, I move to approve the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole as amended by the Council tonight. With the amendment we just voted upon to include the
data.
Yes.
For a second to that?
Second.
The motion's been made by Councilman Anderson, second by Councilman Sudler, to approve the original recommendation of the Council of the Committee Whole report to defer action, as well as to amend that and add that the Social Action Committee data be included in all further deliberations. Any?
I have a question.
We've already voted on the amendment. Questions? Councilman Hosfeld.
The amendment, as I understand it, was to the Social Action Committee's survey results will be included in the developing phase for Dover Park. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's already been voted on. That's already passed, and that's part of the record. We're just incorporating the recommendation of the committee. Any further discussion? Councilman Neal.
We are, just for clarification, this is to defer. Is that correct?
This is to defer further action.
That's correct. In other words, that's what we originally agreed to last Tuesday night, because we want the evaluation to continue. Give the mayor a chance to talk.
No further discussion. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And now I need a motion to accept the report of the Council Committee of the Whole for February 9th.
So moved.
Second.
By Councilman Sutler, second by Councilman Hosfeld. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 7A, evaluation of bids, Hazelville Road Interceptor Replacement Project. Mr. Koenig, would you please brief council on this project?
Thank you, Council President Slavin. In the packet tonight is an action form out of the Public Works Department. They've been working on a number of large wastewater projects over the last few years. This project involves the replacement of approximately 2,000 linear feet of 15-inch diameter sanitary sewer along West North Street, which is the corridor that runs along our industrial complex, including Procter & Gamble. The current pipe is a 15-inch sewer main. It has some negative slope issues and capacity issues during high periods of wastewater flows in this area. And the proposed upgrade includes the replacement of that 2,000 linear feet of line with a new 18-inch diameter sanitary sewer at proper slope, which will improve the capacity of this line and allow for future growth in this wastewater basin. This project was originally bid out in February of 2015. All of the bids received were over budget. The current project budget back then was $755,000. The low bid that we received back in February of 2015 was $822,086. At that time, we had several projects that were over budget with respect to the initial bids. We elected to move forward at that time with the Village of Westover pump station replacement and force main upgrade, which created an instance where we actually moved money out of the project budget for this project because our initial bids were over to fund the Westover pump station project. Then staff worked on a redefining of the traffic control plans. We reviewed the plans for this project, and internally we discussed whether this project should move forward or not. It is still a high priority project. We have a line that is surcharging at certain times, and this line does serve a portion of our industrial corridor, so we considered a critical facility in the wastewater system. We rebid the line. The low bid this time came back at $774,035. We consider the low bid from Eastern States Construction Services to be a qualified bid. However, for us to move forward, we need to amend the project budget and move money into this Hazelville Road Interceptor project in the amount of $312,000 to bring the project budget back up to the required $774,100 to move forward with the project. On page 2 of the action form, you'll see the detail of us proposing to take this out of the reservation of funds for inflow infiltration and get this project off the books and completed. As I said before, we consider this a critical function in the linkage along our industrial corridor, and staff's recommendation, as well as mine, is to award the contract to Eastern States Construction Service for the Dover Hazelville Road Interceptor Replacement Project in the amount of $774,035. I'd be happy to answer any questions council members may have.
Questions for Mr. Koenig? Councilman Hosfeld.
Mr. Koenig, I'm looking at this. This was an CIP FY15 project originally?
That's correct.
And now we're taking money from an FY CIP 16 project.
Correct.
And in that project, we initially started out with $875,000, and now we're down to $223,000 to deal with that project.
Right. That was a reservation in the budget for inflow infiltration projects to do basically sewer replacements throughout the city. This would be an I&I project if we had a high groundwater table in this area, but the groundwater table along the North Street corridor, especially in this area, is not a major contributor to pipe failure. in essence, we're doing the same pipe replacement that we would be doing under the I&I projects, but we're just not subject to our groundwater problem. So where you have separation of joints or you have slope problems, if there's any pop in the groundwater table that would put this pipe essentially underwater, we would have an infiltration problem. We do not have an infiltration problem in this basin at this point because of the ground conditions. So it's not technically an I&I project.
So the I&I is, we set aside $1 million for that, correct?
Roughly $1 million.
CIP, rough, okay. And I guess my last question, it just seems often that we come and we're underbid or we just underestimate, I guess, the cost of these. Is there a way to fix that? Is it, I don't know if it's an education process for our staff. Is there something we can do to help our staff out so that we do a better job of this?
Some of this is our consulting engineers have worked with us on trying to price things. I think the way that the current budget process and project process works is if the project is under $200,000 and we're within the project budget, we don't come back to council, we just move forward. I don't think that's the case over $200,000, but I'm not really sure, to be honest. Any bid over 200 has to come to council. So regardless of our estimating, we would be to council to authorize the bids on this. This project, because we bid it twice, we feel like the project budget needs to be adjused. Our consulting engineers and our staff use the best available data to us, but we can't change the market conditions when they actually bid it. So there's no penalty to our consulting engineers if they miss the target. What it basically requires us to do is to reshuffle the project planning and the project timeline. If we were to try to penalize our engineers for poor estimating or inaccurate estimates, I'm not sure how we would get engineers to sign on with us because they simply can't control the bid market. So in this case, our original project budget was incorrect. If we had adopted the bid project budget from the last time when we got the high bids, we would have been under budget, but we didn't do that. We kept the original project budget in the system. So estimating is, as I've said before, it's not a perfect science. We've had discussions with our design teams on trying to get better estimates going forward. We had a project meeting the other day regarding the water treatment plant upgrades, and we're very concerned about getting accurate estimates for that because we'll be borrowing money for that upgrade. So it's not a perfect science. So what happens for us is when we get a bid that's higher than we expect, but we have to move the project forward, we have to reshuffle the CIP. So that's what we're proposing tonight.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Koenig? Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Koenig, I definitely agree with Councilman Hosfeld's concerns, but I will congratulate you that compared to where it was before, you're actually within 5%, which is fairly tolerable. So I do congratulate your team for getting it much more in line. Now, the question that I have is this reflected in the budget amendments coming up?
This is currently not reflected in any amendments that went forward because we haven't adopted the bid. So
that's fine. I was wondering.
Yes, if council acknowledges this low bid and accepts it, then I guess it would be part of the end of the year true ups for all of our projects.
So, so you feel, follow up, you feel comfortable that we have enough money in the wastewater fund with the budget amendments that will be good to cover this?
I believe we're operating within our original allocation of the budget. So we have the funding appropriated in the capital budget. we're asking to reappropriate it from one project to another, but that funding exists right now for to move forward with this project to construction.
So I guess the next question is, if we do this, what's the downside? Is there a danger of a project, of something breaking, of something being an emergency, of something that's neglected? What's going to be deferred?
Right now, I would say what we would be deferring is the next segment of replacement in our I&I basins. One of them being, for example, White Oak Town Point. We did, I can't remember the name of the road, Buxton Drive or Buck Drive. We have another project scheduled out there that we're trying to go to bid with, so these are part of those funds. So we need to get this project off the books so that we can then concentrate on the next I&I project, and that's the plan.
Thank you.
Further questions for staff? It's the pleasure of council.
Move for approval of the bid.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Neal, seconded by Councilman Hosfeld to recommend awarding the contract to Eastern States Construction Service, Inc. for the amount of $774,035 for the Hazelville Road Interceptor Replacement Project. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sudler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion passes unanimously. Item 7B, evaluation of bids, Silver Lake Dam Sluice Gate Replacement. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you again. This is a small capital project coming out of the Public Works Department. However, it is very much specialty work. The city of Dover is the proud owner of the Silver Lake Dam. This gate system and valve system controls the level of the lake associated with letting water through the dam, both during high periods of rainfall, and also if there were any type of leaks or anything like that at the power plant, we would try to control the level of the lake if there was fuel oil discharges or anything like that. So this valve is really related to flood control measures as well as emergency operations in the event of environmental issues. So the leaking of this valve and the proposed replacement of this valve has come out of the inspections related to the Silver Lake Dam. We bid this work through a request for quotes in accordance with the City of Dover purchasing policy, and received two bids, one in the amount of $122,000, one in the amount of $80,900, which were both substantially over our original project budget of $60,000. Currently, we have $56,300 left in this project budget. We are proposing to move the balance of funding, which is $28,300, from unrestricted funds right now that are appropriated to a expanded street program. This would bring the project budget, the revised project budget, to $84,600 so we can complete the project. And going back to the same discussions at the last project, this is a priority. We need this gate to work, and it is very much specialty work. So we are recommending that we accept the contract with a New Pump Construction Company for the replacement of the Silver Lake Dam sluice gate in the amount of $80,900. We would be proposing to move funds out of the street program identified as project number 1601. On a side note, we bid out the street program last fall and have currently committed $538,800 to an active street program where the work has begun. Assuming that council adopts the recommendation, we still have $357,900 to either add to the 1601 project or bid a spring subsequent street program. So we are not over budget in the expenditure of total funds but we are asking to move funds from the unrestricted component of the street program into this valve replacement so we can complete the valve replacement and get the project off the books. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Cook? What's the pleasure of council?
I got a question.
Councilman Lewis.
What kind of impact will we have if we transfer this money out of the street program, if any?
It's about, just under $30,000 less, depending on which street you're on. You're buying a little bit less curb work and a little less paving. So it would likely defer one street or half a street in the street program. Depending on which street you're on in the city, we have some streets that we've been able to pave and repair for, in the $30,000 to $40,000 range. But I would say the average street length to pave it and do concrete and curb work is probably more in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $150,000. So this is obviously deferring a portion of street work, but the higher priority at this point would be the valve on the dam.
Other questions for Mr. Koenig? What's the pleasure of council?
Move to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Sudler and seconded by Councilman Neal to accept the staff recommendation awarding the contract to New Pump Construction Company for the amount of $80,900 for the Silver Lake Dam sluice gate replacement. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sudler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Husfeldt?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 8. Next, we have the first reading of staff substitute SS number 1 for proposed ordinance number 2016-01. Amendments to Appendix B zoning require a public hearing. It's recommended for referral to the Planning Commission on March 21st, 2016, then a public hearing be set for April 11, 2016 at 7:30 p.m., at which time the final reading and council action will take place. Copies of all proposed ordinances are available at the entrance of council chambers or can be obtained from the city clerk's office. I'd request Councilman Hare, as chair of Leg and Fin, to brief us on this item.
Well, I'll turn it over to Ms. Townsend.
Okay, thank you.
A little more experienced expert.
After reviewing the comments and the proposed changes that came out of the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee at the last Committee of the Whole meeting, I looked at the code and the language.
Mrs. Townsend, for the benefit of people who are watching
Oh,
who are here,
okay.
can you just summarize what the ordinance is?
Yes. This initially started as an ordinance that would prohibit the keeping of fowl in residential zones. Then it became, based on the comments of the last Legislative Finance and Administration Committee, no longer a prohibition on keeping of chickens or fowl, but rather to come up with some clear parameters so that if a property owner chooses to keep chickens in their yard, that they can do it in a way that is not problematic to their neighbors. So the staff substitute includes taking the issue of fowl out of the area where we address pets, so that it says you can keep domestic animals as pets and limits your dogs to 3, and then takes a next section that would say keeping of chickens for individual domestic purposes subject to the following restrictions would be permitted as an accessory use in the residential zones. So it specifies that the lots have to be a quarter acre or more, that not more than 5 chickens would be permitted on a residential lot, that chickens would be required to be registered with the Delaware Department of Agriculture, that they would be penned in a coop that will be at least 4 square feet per chicken, and that these coops would be located only in the rear yards and a minimum of 20 feet from side and rear property lines, and that any odor would not be discernible from the property lines. It would require that all residential lots comply with this requirement by June 1st, 2016. So it takes the language that was discussed at the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee discussion and just restructures it into the ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Questions for Mrs. Townsend? I will entertain a motion for its referral as recommended.
So moved. Second.
Question?
Let me get the motion.
Is it true that,
Been moved by Councilman Sutherland, second by Councilman Hare. Councilman Neal.
is it true that you have banned roosters from this?
You know what? I had thought that we had, but we did not. So we can certainly incorporate an amendment to add that in the, as it goes through the planning commission.
That's not
process.
sexual discrimination. I think that is for the peace of the neighborhood.
I think roosters were already banned because I can remember a few years ago that someone had one and every morning we knew he had him.
That may be addressed in the animal control section.
Right, so I think the roosters are already banned.
I'll accept your word for it, sir.
But you can.
We'll verify it as it goes through the process.
Okay, we have a motion before us to refer this as recommended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'll now defer to the city clerk for the introduction of the proposed ordinance in accordance with Section 1-9 of the Dover Code. Mrs. McDowell.
Staff substitute number 1 for proposed ordinance number 2016-01, amending Appendix B zoning, Article 3 district regulations, Section 1, one-family residence zones, R20, R15, R10, R8, and R7, subsection 1.1 uses permitted, subsection 1.15 accessory uses limited to the following. This constitutes the first reading. The final reading is scheduled to take place on April 11th, 2016.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 9, we now have the first reading of proposed ordinance 2016-07. The final reading of the ordinance and action by council will take place on March 14, 2016. Copies of all proposed ordinances are available at the entrance to the council chambers or can be obtained from the city clerk's office. If there are no questions or proposed amendments, I will defer to the city clerk for the introduction of the ordinances in accordance with Section 1-9 of the Dover Code. Madam Clerk, there is no action for us to take at this time. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 2016-07, second budget amendment for fiscal year 2015-2016. This constitutes the first reading. The final reading is scheduled to take place on March 14, 2016.
Agenda item number 10, final reading of proposed ordinances. The first reading of the ordinances was accomplished during the council meeting of February 8, 2016. Copies of the proposed ordinances are available at the entrance of the council chambers. First, I will entertain a motion to consider the final readings by title only, which is to simply allow the waiving of the readings.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Hare,
Second?
seconded by Councilman Neal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 10A, ordinance 2016-05, amending Chapter 106, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 3, Stopping, Standing, and Parking, Division 2, Metered Parking, Section 106-164, Violation Penalties. I'd ask Chief Burnett to please brief us on this item.
Yes, the amendment reduces the maximum number of past due or accumulated violations from 5 to 3 in order for a vehicle to be subject to enhanced civil enforcement, such as being a parking boot placed upon it. In the past, it was a number of 5, and it used to be $200. You had to owe $200 worth of fines. Now it's $100 worth of fines, and it should be reduced to 3. The cheapest, the less expensive fine that we have is $20, and then it doubles, so that would make it 40. And if you have 3, that makes it $120. So therefore, to make it coincide with the $100, it should be reduced as such. Or so amended as such, I'm sorry.
Questions for Chief?
Do you have one, Mr. President, Chief, would you be comfortable with it being $120? And the reason why I'm asking, it's not the fine for handicap parking, $100?
Yes, but if it was overdue, it would be doubled, which would make it $200.
Okay, but so this exceeds 100, so $100 ticket wouldn't qualify, but it would be basically $100.01.
You'd still have to have 3 tickets total.
Okay, because I saw an or, that's why I had some concern. Thank you.
What is the pleasure of council?
Move to accept the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hare, seconded by Councilman Cole to accept the recommendation and adopt the ordinance. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion carries 8-1. Item 10B, ordinance 2016-06, amending Chapter 26 Businesses, Article 2 Licenses, Sections 26 through 40 License Issuance, Expiration, and Form, and Section 26-42 Penalty for Late Payment of License Fee. Mrs. Townsend, would you please brief council?
Thank you. The principal purpose of this amendment is to change the business license year so that it begins August 1st, so that we are not bringing in the revenue at the transition of the fiscal year. Under the current ordinance, we have to bring in the revenue in June and then do a lot of manual work on the side of the finance department to move the revenue to the next fiscal year. So this just cleans that up a little bit. But while we were in there cleaning it up, we aligned it more with the way the process works and took out the pieces that aren't being used. It relies on the clerk's office to do a number of the business license functions, and those functions are under the Department of Planning and Inspection. So we just align that with the way the workflow goes.
Questions for Mrs. Townsend? What is the pleasure of council?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Neal and seconded by Councilman Cole to adopt the ordinance as presented. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 11, city manager's announcements. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you, Council President Slavin. Just to follow up on some issues that staff has been working with, we've had a number of discussions over the last month regarding the utility billing. We continue to try to get the word out to our customers to focus on that 21-day window from the billing date until the subject to disconnect date, to get our customers accustomed to paying in that 21-day window. We are making modifications to the language. We are trying to get this out in additional billing inserts, out on Facebook, out in any message we can to our customers to get everybody into that 21-day window so that we do not have to expend resources creating cut lists and sending people out to cut electric. If we can get our customers accustomed to paying in that 21-day window, then we can channel those resources to other activities to support our customer service section. Those activities also have included trying to encourage people to get their bills electronically, which reduces the time from when they're sent out to receiving them, getting customers familiar with and accepting of electronic bill payment, and getting people to really understand that we have to actually receive the money in the 21-day window. It's not just a matter of I've mailed my check, I've asked my bank to draft the transaction, but we need to receive the transaction within that 21-day time frame. So we're doing everything we can to refine that message, get that message out to customers, to reduce the amount of funds that are due to the city of Dover. In addition to that, I meet every month with the tax assessment office, and we routinely talk about the delinquent property tax bill, which is the next backlog that we intend to try to tackle going forward. Current year, actually, base taxes for all years, what is due to the city right now, as of February 4th, was $340,000 plus dollars. If you take the base tax, the penalties, and some other items that get added to the tax rolls, the city is due over $520,000. And we anticipate that we're going to become much more diligent in getting people to pay past due delinquent taxes through the use of clean hands going forward. And we would just like everybody to be on notice now that we intend to pursue those options as we start reducing some of our customer service backlog. The third item relates to delinquent rental permits. Rental permits were due, I believe, January 31st. They include the new fees that were sent out, but there is a fairly long list of delinquent rental permits. Unfortunately, there appears to be some correlation between delinquent rental permits and delinquent taxes. So we are going to be working internally to coordinate those lists and go after those delinquencies with clean hands going forward. So those are the things that staff is working on, which, under the lien model, if our customers would simply pay their bills on time, we would not have to dedicate resources to those activities, and those resources could be used to improving services across the city. So I would request that all of our customers focus on utility billing, delinquent property taxes, and delinquent rental permits if they are on those lists. So that's all I would like to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I was just going to.
Item number 12 is council member announcements. I'll begin by asking if you could please keep the family of Herb Conowitz in your prayers and your thoughts this evening. Herb's lovely wife, Linda, passed away this past weekend. Suffice to say, both Herb and Linda Conowitz have been real lions in our community, helping to care for other people. I ask you to keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Councilman Cole, did you have something?
I made a promise to my daughter. She wanted me to say her name, so she won her spelling bee contest for her district, and she'll be representing her district at the state level. So.
But you have to say your name.
You got it back.
Paisley.
There you go.
All right. Councilman Sutherland.
I would like to thank the Modern Maturity Center for their program on African American celebration for African American women during Black History Month. And also like to thank the City Council on behalf of the Social Action Commission of Mount Zion Church and all of the survey applicants who took the time out to fill out the application. Thank you.
Another question. Councilman Hare and then Councilman Hospital.
Just if Peggy is watching, I told her dad to make sure she got a lot of nice things when they went shopping Sunday. So, Peggy, if you didn't get them, you let me know.
Sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. Councilman Hospital.
If I could, I'm going to get some help from the city clerk's office. If we could look at the screen, the Dover Fire Department is in the middle of a fund drive, and they have currently sent out about nearly 16,000 mailers as part of this fund drive. They have received less than 10% back. So if we could get some help from our community members and respond back and help out our Dover Fire Department, it would be greatly appreciated. We have a first-class fire department, volunteers who answer that siren and answer that call in the middle of the night when it may wake you up. Just think about those guys that are responding, those guys and girls that are responding to that fire call and maybe coming to a house or your house when you're in trouble or in need of help. So I would ask all our residents to pay attention to that fund drive, and especially those institutions of higher learning within our city who pay no taxes. This would be a wonderful time for you to reach deep into your budget and reward those who serve you diligently. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Any other members? Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to remind everyone that Saturday, February 27th, between noon and 4 at Christian Life Center, 614 South DuPont Highway, which is across the street from Winter Ford, is a chili cook-off, which is a fundraiser, a community-based fundraiser for local charities. It will spot 100% of the proceeds will go, and everything raised, every dollar raised, because there's nothing for rent. The food is brought in by volunteers, and as people donate, it'll help the Veterans United Outreach, which has been active 15 years in this community, helping the veterans who have served us. And I've seen veterans benefit from them personally. And I know that they put in a lot more than they bring in. And it would be a wonderful thing if we could pay for a lot of their outreach events this year. And the MLK Junior Education Center, which is a relatively new organization, which has already helped over 100 adults get their high school diploma. So I would like to encourage you to come. It's a donation base, so there's not a set donation. It's a recommended donation of $15 a family. If you don't have that, you can do less. If you have more, you can do more. Or you can bring food. And go to my Facebook page, and you can go ahead, sign up, and you can help the community and help build the community a little bit stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other announcements on behalf of council? Councilman Sutton?
Move for
I'll entertain a
adjournment.
motion to adjourn. Seconded by Councilman Cole. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Stand adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.